the channel. Excuse me. Today we are kind of doing an extension of the last video. It's going to be another one of our hidden gems series on the channel. But last video we had mentioned that we're splitting up the defensive line between defensive ends and defensive tackles. We're doing it kind of based on Madden's positions as opposed to actually doing it on real football positions. So, like, normally speaking, you would do, real football-wise, there are interior defensive linemen, there are exterior defensive linemen, edge players, but we're not going to do it that way. We're just going to break it down by the defensive tackle position in general. We already broke down the defensive end position, and this will allow us to show you guys a little bit of a combination between both of what we're looking at. You could have some pass rushers in here, you could have some true run stuffers in here, and that is definitely going to be the case with what I've picked for you guys today. So just to start off, we're going to look at Andrew Billings at the top of the list. He is a guy that was out of Baylor, and a lot of people said should have had high round talent. And we were watching the draft, and you just kept seeing him slide and slide and slide. And then I think he eventually got picked in about the 5th round. Well, the reason that he wasn't picked early is because D tackles of this sort don't have a whole lot of value anymore in the true NFL. Run stuffing D tackles aren't as valuable as they used to be because they play so few snaps. It's just not worth it to pick them with a high pick. And so Andrew Billings was a great example of that. But he's a great player when he is on the field, and he's a great player in run-stuffing situations, and he is true to that in Madden. He actually turns out to be a half-decent pass rusher if you get him up into the 80s, which you can do because he's 24 years old and a 76 overall. He's got 93 strength, so he can go up against just about anybody and win along the offensive line. He is at the top end of the class for sure in strength rating, which is really nice. That's what you want to see from your D tackle. And then on top of that, I believe he has very good block shedding, or kind of high block shedding at 74, and you can combine that with a 72 power move, which means he can effectively get off of a block every once in a while. Now, the next one that we're going to talk about is Davon God. He's out of LSU, so I know him from, I'm a little bit familiar with him. I trade for him in a lot of leagues, and that's mainly just because he's from LSU, but because they finally made him pretty good in Madden because he's actually really good in real life. The reason he's really good in Madden is because he's this 78 block shedding and then 77 finesse moves. That combination's a little bit weird. The 78 block shedding means that he's going to be pretty effective against the run. He's going to be able to get off of run blocks and stuff like that. But the 77 finesse move means that he's a pretty good pass rusher as well, and that's a very unique stat to have as a D tackle. There aren't a lot of D tackles that you'll find out there, and very few, if any, on this list. Actually, only one other on this list that have above 70 finesse move. So if that's something you're looking for an interior defensive lineman or a D tackle, Davon God is the way to go. He's one of the only ones on this list that's going to be able to provide that finesse move for you, and that's really, really important for God. He is 24 years old, 75 overall. One of my other personal favorites on this list is Taven Bryan, and I use him a whole lot in a bunch of different leagues, and the reason being is that he has 93 strength combined with pretty good attributes otherwise. He's 23 years old, so you get an extra year of development over top of a guy like Andrew Billings. He's pretty fast for a D tackle at 76 speed. That's fairly fast for a defensive tackle in Madden. And if we go over and look at the rest of his stats, they are somewhat impressive. He has 82 power move, which I believe is the highest out of anybody off this list, which means automatically he is a top-end pass rusher if you use him. If you start him, 82 power move is good enough to pressure the quarterback a significant number of times. And so as you continue to progress him, he'll turn into a really good pass rusher for you. But in addition to that, he's very close to that 70 threshold of finesse move, and he has 75 block shed, so he's not going to get totally eaten up in the run game, and as you progress him, that's going to go up, and he's going to be very effective. He's only 23 years old, which is nice, because you get a few years of development with him. You can turn him into a monster. Let me tell you guys, I've got him up into the 90s before because he is so freaking good in Madden. He's 6'4", 291. He's a very agile player for a D tackle, as you can see, with 78 agility, 85 acceleration, so he gets off the ball really quick. This is maybe my personal favorite off of this entire list. God really good, Billings really good, but Taven Bryan, it might be the #1 player on this list. Now, he's close. He's very close to Harrison Phillips. Harrison Phillips is another guy that I like a lot this year in Madden, and in past years I've actually liked him. When he was in the game last year as a rookie, I really liked him. He's got 92 strength. He's a little bit slow, so he's much more of a run-stuffing type of D-tackle, but he's got 92 strength, and he just is a very good run stuffer. He's got 78 block shedding, which is really good for a guy of this overall. You can get him up into the 80s faster than most of these other guys, and he's got 72 power moves, so you can get him up there if you choose to play him. But the main stat is his strength combined with his block shedding, and he's got good size. He's a very good D-tackle to use, and he plays very well in the game. Now, to get to the bottom of our list here and get to we have a nice spread going on between the mid to high 70s, then into the 60s. There are other players that I just chose not to put on this list because I didn't want to drown you guys in players. I wanted to give you guys a good selection between mid to high 70s all the way down into the 60s, so you guys can choose what you want to do with them. The next one is Jerry Tillery. Now, he's one of the only rookies on this list. I've used him with the Chargers. He's not the best player in the world, but he's a good player that you can build into what you want. And the reason being is that he's 22 years old. He has decent speed for a D-tackle. He's got very good strength for a D-tackle at 87. Pretty agile, pretty good acceleration. He just doesn't have the best moves when it comes to his power and finesse moves. It's decent with a 75 power move, 68 finesse move, and 73 block shed. And, not the best in any particular category, but being that he's 22 years old, if you get a couple upgrades for him, you can imagine he'll be up into the 80s fairly shortly, fairly soon, fairly quickly. With Jerry Tillery. Now, the bottom three guys on this list, if we move on from Jerry Tillery, they're not going to have very good stats pretty much at all in any of these categories. Miles Brown has a decent block shed stat at 71, but that's not very good. Albert Huggins has 68 power move, just not very good in the other categories. These guys are going to be mainly young, physical guys that you could turn into players if you get them a ton of XP. And Lewis Neal is an interesting one, that he is a very quick, agile player that's more of a defensive end type of player that is at D-tackle. He has good finesse move, the second best finesse move of anybody on this list, and having a 70 finesse move as like a 63 overall or something like that is actually pretty impressive. Now, let me go over these two guys first. Miles Brown has 88 strength, which is pretty good for a D-tackle. He's 21 years old, so he's the youngest player on this list. And at 21 years old as a 66 overall, that's pretty good. I mean, you have a lot of development in front of him. By the time he hits the end of basically what would be his rookie deal, you could have him into the high 70s, maybe even the 80s, and be prepared to turn him into a star player for you. That is obviously dependent on you actually doing something with him, getting him XP, maybe focus training him, but he is a guy that you could certainly work around. The combination of age and overall and physical ability is there. You just have to build upon it. Albert Huggins is another one that's very similar to that. He's got 90 strength. He's not very agile or anything like that. Doesn't have very good stats, but he is 22 years old. He's a guy that I've personally used and actually plays decently well with, so I can vouch that he plays decently well, especially if you get him some XP and turn him into a better player. He's maybe one of the worst ones on this list. I'm not going to say I like him that much. I definitely like most of these other guys better than Huggins, but he is an option in the low 60s if you need a budget D-tackle. The final one is Lewis Neal. Now, Lewis Neal's an interesting one. The reason Lewis Neal's an interesting one is because he's 24 years old as a 63 overall, so it's going to be tough to get him up into a super high overall. But his overall is not what his strength is, and you're not going to need to turn him into a super high overall if you're using him the way that he's probably intended to be used. He's got 81 speed, which is phenomenal for a defensive tackle. As you guys can see, it's well above anybody else on this list at 81 speed. However, he lacks in strength, so he's a little bit weak, which means this combination should tell you right away that this guy's purely a pass-rushing D-tackle. And if you use him that way and you just pour his XP into pass-rushing stats, you'll be able to get him into really good pass rush. He should be a really good pass rusher for you. And the reason being is that he has that 70 finesse move already as a 63 overall. You should be able to get this guy for a really cheap price. You should have no problem going out and finding Lewis Neal. He should be a free agent in your league. He's got 70 finesse move. And all you should do with this guy, your intention with Lewis Neal should be to take him and pour your XP and your points into his speed rusher or whatever the category is. You don't want him to be a power rusher. You don't want him to be a run stopper. You want this guy to be purely a pass rusher. And having somebody with 80 plus speed coming at the quarterback from the interior defensive line from the interior of the line is going to be really difficult to handle if you can get him through. If he can actually get off blocks, that 81 speed is going to be tremendous for that position. I can't tell you how much that 81 speed makes a difference in the middle of the field. Now, you're going to want to try and avoid having him on the field in running situations because he will get eaten up a little bit. He's only got 83 strength. He's not got very good block shedding. So he will get eaten up a little bit. But he will do very well as a pass rusher. I've personally used him as a starting pass rusher for my team, and I've gotten him double-digit sacks before in a franchise. So it's just purely depending on how you use him. If you can scheme him up, if you can get him some XP, he can become a very valuable asset to your team. And like I said, he's a free agent in most leagues. He's only a 63 overall and 24 years old. He's kind of undersized, like I said. He's kind of weak compared to other D tackles, but you could use him in a specialized role. So this one is one of the kind of sneaky good ones on this list that you're going to want to add to your team and see if you can do something with him. I'm not going to 100% say everybody's going to be able to turn this guy into a monster pass rusher, but give him a shot. Add him to your team. He's a 63 overall. It's going to cost you virtually nothing to have this guy on your team. And you never know. He could break out for you, could become a very good player for you, and could help you out in the pass rushing game. So that's the list. Hopefully this helps you guys out in some way. I gave you guys a good spread between the lows to the highs in terms of overall. As always, these guys are guys that are going to be young, and most of them are pretty physically gifted in some regard that you can kind of mold into whatever you want to mold them into. The D tackles are a little bit more specialized in that, you know, like I had said earlier in the video, some of these guys are just pure run stuffers. Guys that have below 70 speed, they're not going to be pass rushers for you. They're pretty much going to be run stuffers. So make sure you just go back through the video and pick up on the guys that you want, whether you want a pass rusher, whether you want a run stuffer, whether you want a combo guy that can do both. Pick that out. You know, Billings is going to be a guy that could do both. Godshow's is going to be a run stuffer. Taven Bryan is a guy that can do both. He's mainly a pass rusher, but you could develop him into a really nice run stuffer with that strength rating and his block shed rating. Phillips is a run stuffer. Tillery is mainly intended to be a pass rusher. And then Miles Brown, Albert Huggins, those guys are just going to be run stuffers for you. And then Lewis Neal is a pure pass rushing defensive tackle for you guys. So, like I said, hopefully this helps you guys out in some way. If this does give you guys any help, if it gives you some ideas of what to do with your D tackles or who to pick up or who to trade for, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel for more, and comment down below what you guys would like to see next, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.